Six-Day War. Nile International was founded in 2012 with an aim to place Palestine on the world's culture map and open up channels for dialogue and exchange. The Seas Mine runs from October 5th till 31st. The exhibition at Birzeit University Museum will be open to the public for another 3 months.
Welcome back. Ancient Egypt, the pharaohs, all the Egyptians, they were pioneers approximately in every aspect of life. And today we are going to dive into civilization and to tackle a very specific point: judiciary, courts, law, crimes, penalties, punishment, innocence, everything and in detail with an expert who is going to tell us more how the Egyptians dealt with their judiciary system or how they have built this judiciary system in the first place. We are very much delighted to have with us researcher and Egyptologist Dr. Yasser Kamel. Hello, sir.
Morning.
Very good morning.
Hello. Dr. Yasser, can you please shed light on the judiciary system in ancient Egypt? How did it start and how did it look like?
Actually, we have our own information about how the courts were in Egypt, how the law was, based on the myth of Osiris and Isis, Isis and Osiris. It was written on papyruses, one of them on the Shista papyrus, Shista Piti papyrus, which goes back to the reign of Ramses V, the 20th dynasty, makes around 1000 BC, and they describe how Set and Horus had a conflict between each of them. Of course, the conflict was caused by the death or the murder of Osiris by Set. Set was uncle of Horus, and both had to fight each other. Horus claims himself to be the legal son and the legal successor, and his uncle Set took it by force and seized the throne of Egypt and ruled everywhere. And the conflict ended by the defeat of Set or Seth. Then a trial was held. Then the pantheon of the Egyptian gods, pantheon of gods, decided to accuse Set or Seth for the murder of Osiris. And they supported Horus to become the legal successor, rule the whole country, and deprived Set the honor and forced him to rule the salty water, the Sahara Desert, the arid, the barren lands, where he deals with no humans almost. So based on that written papyrus and the hieroglyphics found in most of temples, repeating the story of the two brothers that one, the bad, killed the good, Osiris and Seth. So we are sure that they had already, as they mentioned this, in more than 3,000 years ago, and also we have resources that bring the story of Osiris back to 4,000 years before the Christ. We think that that should be the system the Egyptian had. We can understand they had a court, they had judges, and they had jury judges. Yeah. I mean, sometimes they should be 14, in other cases could be 12, and they allowed defendants to stand beside the accused for the murder, and they had code of law where they could be inspired how to punish and how to forgive.
This was my coming question.
Yes.
Regarding this code of laws. How it was written in the first place, or who did it? If we do have an idea, I mean, who were the men of law?
We are not able to tell you who was the one invented the code of law, but actually we think that it goes back to time of Zoser, by Imhotep time, and also could go back to the Old Kingdom. I mean, we have the very famous wise man, Ptahhotep, and he was a judge, poet,
There was a lot of things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He wrote about how, or advised how to stick to ethics and moralities based on a law and code of laws. But actually, we don't have any constitution left. Probably they had a book, like they wrote everything, astronomy, mathematics, medicine.
And
So
law
most
included.
probably they had things like that.
Yeah.
And they had a goddess. A goddess makes order called Might or Mat. I mean, the pharaoh should claim that his reign is done by the rules, or following the rules, or applying to follow the rules of Mat. Might is a woman made all the time with her eyes covered, and she is the one sometimes transforms into scales, and her both hands ends with the scales, and sometimes the sword, which modern courts took its image from.
Yeah.
In my slides, you may see that exactly. The lady, the woman there in the sculpture, the modern
Blinded
the
and
covered eyes with
Yeah.
a band, and she holds the scales to apply justice without bias, without seeing who
Yeah.
would be affected by this.
So did we take, Dr. Yasser, this sign from the ancient Egyptian, because of course still we do put that figure of the
Might.
lady with eye folded
Right.
Outside the court.
That's right, on facades of courts, like
Yeah.
Egyptian courts
Indeed.
and others. Yeah, that lady, her hands ends by the two scales, by the scales, one right, one left,
Yeah.
and her eyes are completely covered with a band. And she is the goddess of justice of ancient Egypt, Might. And if the pharaoh would not follow Might in his life, I mean, there's no balance, there's no virtue, there's nothing correct, and he will have chaos instead. If there's means the goddess of order, discipline, system, justice.
Yeah. Absolute words. I mean, it started like that with absolute words. I mean, it's evil against good.
Yeah.
It's a virtue against sin, for example. But I think it developed to have some certain crimes. For example, as far as I know, that pollution of the Nile, for example, polluting the Nile was such a big crime. And those who committed this crime were punished in ancient Egypt.
Right.
How did this develop this way?
So we found collection of papyruses explain the kind of punishment someone would do in terms of polluting the river, in terms of committing a sacrilege in the temple, in terms of stealing a tomb. And a lot of them, they end by just prisoning the person himself, and maybe a physical punishment. They always seek a confession by the person. I mean, they would not force a sentence over somebody unless they have the defendants and himself to go by the court, apply to the rules and confess with
they
his
have committed
sin.
this sin.
Yeah.
Without confession, there's no sentence at all. If the person from a higher ranking position, they would have to force him to commit suicide.
Oh,
We have cases like, for example, the Papyrus of Turin, which documents the first well-known conspiracy against the pharaoh. I mean, the royal ladies, including his secondary wife, she's called T, both ways you can read, and she conspired with some of the courtiers and officials to kill Ramses III and allow her son, Pentuer, to rule instead. And they conspired, and the plotters succeeded and reached the king in his probably palace bedroom and killed him. The experts think he didn't die immediately, and he had enough time to order to assign 12 high senior judges, and had given them the ability to take orders without referring to him. So they could met out any decision without going back to the pharaoh.
Equality in front of law.
Exactly. Said, I don't go back to me, either he's still alive or died, and see what could be done. And those 12 judges decided, after confession, after defendants, after testifying against those plotters, that the highest among them, like the queen, like the son, they would have no equal in ranking person to persecute them. So they were not executed by anybody because nobody equals.
Yeah.
So they should execute themselves. I'm not suggesting they had like Japanese harakiri, but I mean, I'm sure the Egyptian had something similar.
Yeah.
And either just he poisoned himself, or she poisoned herself, or maybe
did that actually happen?
they wrote on the papyrus that they were left to die by their own, or left the decision to be done by own. It looks like
Because they committed which sins or which crimes?
they
Therefore
killed the
were-
king.
Because they killed.
Yes, I mean the son, Pentower, and the secondary wife, not the main queen. King had a queen, Titi, so faithful. The other one, the one wanted her son to rule instead.
Yeah.
I mean, the firstborn son of Queen Titi should be ruling immediately after the
yes.
father dies. That's illegal. Who is Ramses IV? Ramses IV. And the other lady, who was jealous and then wanted her son to take over, she plotted the king and conspired with a number of them, maybe 20 officials. And she had a butler, even allowed her, Allah, could go to his own bedroom. And according to the CAT scanning, they think he was slayed by knife, or his throat was cut by knife. And this is recently proven that he died due to that, but maybe they tried to treat him first medically or save his life. He lived enough long to make an order that he should assign, or he assigned 12 judges that can mete out whatever they need to do to seek justice.
Since we do have courts and we do have judges, then you do have
And
prosecution, we
lawyers.
do have lawyers, and we do have the judicial system.
Complete system. Complete system.
Complete, as we know it right now. The choice or the selection criteria, how the Egyptians have chosen their lawyers or their judges just to be that much clean enough or trusted enough to shoulder this big responsibility.
Well, this may make people not really happy with the statement, but they decided to take the judge from the nobles, the wealthy,
So,
from the
sorry
ones,
for
from the
interruption
ones.
here, Dr. Yasser, but I believe to a certain extent it was a society which was giving the most of the facilities and most of the ranks to the high-ranking people or the socially the upper class of the society.
But maybe because the upper class are the ones could accomplish very high education. I mean, I said used to be the judge one of those nobles.
Yeah.
But it became later on required that he would be very highly qualified, as well as a nobleman. I mean, the judge should probably study all sciences and read all writings. So the judge starts with a scribe. I mean, a man like sets and the king tell him what to write. And had to learn writing, all cursive writings, all kind of writings. Then had to be aware of medicine, physics, mathematics. Otherwise, have no wisdom and knowledge to judge things. If the two of them have a conflict or dispute between two persons, and the judge is not clever to count or not aware of the subject, I mean, they had land property disputes between farmers. So once they come and complain, he should know exactly how they measure. Then he has to have knowledge about most of
this
things.
was a phenomena already. I mean, you would find an architect, an engineer who is also good in poetry, or is a man of literature. In the same time, he would know something about astrology. I mean, it was a phenomena that a man of science is a man of all sciences. I can say so.
That's true. He has to have enough knowledge about every subject that he could be fair in his decisions or sentences. And the judgment of Osiris was on papyruses of old Egypt, where Osiris was Osiris was in control of his paradise. Then the dead is brought to the court. Then he would confess before the jury and defend himself. They call it negative confession. He speaks of things he maybe committed and try to defend himself against others he did not commit. Then they would just have Horus to defend him like a lawyer. And they have the scales to weigh symbolically his heart against his feather and heart. If he's innocent, his heart would look lighter than the feather.
But were laws modified, for example, from a dynasty to the other?
Of course, there are certain crimes that they came in later times. I mean, for example, stealing the tombs, for example. That was a sacrilege the early Egyptians did not do. But once we had financial crisis, weakness, so they would kill those people. I mean, they had a sentence, they could sentence death, and sometimes they could burn him even, because they are the ones could commit something like opening the tomb of an ancestor and robbing all his contents and belongings. We have the Palermo stone, an old stone. The oldest stone actually talks about Egypt, is telling us that they had a case referred that Egypt owned lands and property. So ownership was known. We have the Brooklyn Papyrus in Brooklyn Library in New York. We have a sentence or a description of a lady who actually complains that her father, a lady that she complains or she requests from the court that she becomes independent from her father, control. She became married and she requests from the court that she be given the full authority to be independent from her father. Women owned lands and could run business, and they have a law allow them to inherit after the father what could be equal to the son.
Were women equal to male or females equal to males in the
In front of law?
In front of the law, they were. I mean, of course, the kingship preferred a man due to wars, due to things. I mean, they found a man is an army leader is much more successful. However, they had ladies could do this, but the majority of men are gifted to be like this. So they preferred the king to be a man, because the man most probably would lead the war and would fight physically and not allow. I mean, the pharaoh in Egypt should be the first person to fight.
But there were female leaders in Egypt, in ancient
circumstances,
Egypt as well.
Circumstances brought us smart queens, and by good luck, they were the right ones. Hotep, the one defeated the Hyksos, instead of her husband who died early, killed actually. Then we have Hatshepsut, ruled for 19 years with wisdom and intelligence. I mean, but like I said, the first choice for the royal family is a boy king that could be participating in the battle himself, or could be interested in the war. I mean, sometimes the war is required to avoid danger, could come from some borders. The pharaoh looks like weak, so weak.
But as far as I understand that, there are certain times or in certain dynasties, the laws became harsher. Or I don't know, because of the atmosphere, because of the circumstances. Would you please correct me if I'm wrong? This Hammurabi issue, was it? I think it was that harsh, and it seems that something was needed, or the atmosphere, the circumstances in his period or in his dynasty, in specific in his reign, needed to have this kind of modification to make the law harsher. True?
Do you talk about if we have any inspiration from Mesopotamian Hammurabi? Hammurabi in ancient Iraq, he was a king that he actually wrote one of the most successful law codes. And his code resembles the biblical code and the 10 Commandments that came later on. Egyptian had reached similar target by the wisdom of Ptah-hotep. And in the earlier texts referred to Osiris and Isis. And the religion, they refer to what looked like 10 Commandments in much, much earlier time than Hammurabi in Iraq be born, or actually the Moses to exist.
Yep.
Indeed. Dr. Yasser Kamel, Egyptologist and researcher in Egyptology, thank you very much, sir, for your precious input, and always a pleasure to know about the history of ancient Egyptian.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Right after the short break, we are going to be back, so stay tuned only on Nile TV International.